Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Florida Shorebird Monitoring Program training webinar for rooftop monitors. I'm Shay Armstrong, the coordinator for the Florida Shorebird Alliance. Today's webinar will be a pretty straight run through. However, we will stop periodically for questions. If you have questions throughout, just type them into the chat box and I'll work to answer them during those breaks. And today's training focuses on how to do rooftop surveys and how to enter them into the Florida Shorebird database. There are 6 species of shorebirds and seabirds that use rooftop nests in Florida. Seabirds like black skimmers, least terns, roseate terns, and gold-billed terns, and shorebirds like the American oystercatcher and the killdeer that are found to nest on rooftops. For the most part, you'll be surveying least terns on rooftops, and occasionally black skimmer will nest. Even more rare are American oystercatchers and others, depending on where you are in the state. It's helpful to familiarize yourself with these birds that are in your area. There is a guide to birds and tutorials on the Florida Shorebird Alliance website. And also, if you're new to rooftop monitoring, it's helpful to shadow more advanced birders to get to know what you're looking at. So, some essentials to know about rooftop nesting are that shorebirds and seabirds select flat gravel rooftops to lay their nests. Typically, these birds nest on beaches, laying eggs in the sand, but as fewer beaches become available for nesting, several species are using rooftops as another nesting habitat. And rooftop nesting has been documented in the state since the 1950s. For breeding least terns in Florida, about half of their colonies are now on rooftops, which makes this artificial habitat important to monitor. The birds will dig a nest scrape in the gravel just like they would in the sand, and they lay their eggs just the same. A majority of rooftop nesting happens along the coast, but there are some inland colonies on roofs. The inland sites are near water, so the birds can continue to fish and feed their young. And so keep in mind that while most occur along the coast, some do occur inland, and you could find them there. And there are pros and cons to rooftop nesting. In Florida, there's considerable rooftop habitat available for nesting. There are a lot of flat gravel rooftops around the state, found at malls, warehouse buildings, grocery stores, etc. Tar and gravel rooftops were the early technology used on many buildings around the state, so there's still a lot of acreage available for nesting. Another benefit of rooftop nesting is that there is less disturbance at the colonies than would be on the beaches. There aren't dogs or people to compete with, and so for the most part, rooftop nesters can complete their breeding cycle without disturbance. They also face fewer predators than ground nesting colonies. Because they are on roofs, they don't face pressure from coyotes, feral cats, foxes, and the like. But rooftop nesting has its own unique challenges, and although there are still around 400 rooftops available for nesting in the state, they are being re-roofed at a rapid rate, making less habitat available. And while it's true that there's less disturbance on rooftops, if and when there is disturbance, it can be catastrophic to the colony. For example, if a building owner needs to fix the air conditioning during the breeding season, the repair process can cause the colony to abandon and fail. The birds react more severely to rooftop disturbance than they do when approaching them on the ground. Also, even though they have fewer ground predators, they still contend with avian predators such as crows and gulls, so they aren't completely immune. And another unique challenge to rooftop nesting is that because these birds are on the roof, the chicks can fall off. They get washed down the gutters and end up on the ground. If they're on the ground, then the chicks face predators such as cats. They can also starve, and especially if they're close to roads, they can get run over by cars. So with all the benefits and pressures of rooftop nesting, we within the Florida Shorebird Alliance work to protect these birds by notifying the property owner that they have these unique birds nesting on their roofs. We educate them about the birds and provide them with their local FWC contacts. We also advise them to conduct preventative maintenance for air conditioners and rooftops so that emergency repairs are minimized if and when the birds start nesting. The Florida Shorebird Alliance website has letters, postcards, flyers, signs, and other outreach material for rooftop nesting. So be sure to check out those on the Florida Shorebird Alliance resource page, which I'll bring up a little bit later. We also protect rooftop nesting birds by fencing roofs that do not have a raised edge, known as a parapet. That's the picture shown on the lower right. There's a parapet there. Chick fencing helps keep birds from falling off the roof. Partners identify roofs that need fencing and work with local FWC staff to fence the roofs each year. Also, sometimes chicks will fall down the storm drain, and so our partners put screens on the drains to prevent chicks from falling through. Another way we protect these nesting birds is to return chicks to the rooftops after they have fallen. When fencing or covering drain holes isn't possible, we have chick checkers who go out several times a day to check on the chicks and return fallen ones to the rooftop when possible. And when chicks have been injured by the fall, they take them to local rehabilitators. Chick checkers are extremely important to sites where we can't modify the roofs to protect chicks. And if you want instructions on how to build what's sometimes known as a chick-a-boom or a chick lift, this is the tool that helps put chicks back on the roof without actually having to go on the roof yourself. That's pictured in the left-hand picture there. That's a chick-a-boom. If you want instructions on how to build those, please email me or your local FWC regional species conservation biologist for the plans. Before moving into the survey details, I want to thank each of you for participating in rooftop surveys. Your participation makes it possible to locate and protect rooftop nesting birds and chicks. The data you collect helps detect population trends and informs policy for our imperiled bird species like these pictured here. As I mentioned, about half of least-turned nests on rooftops now, so when you report their colonies, it helps us count them in statewide population estimates. Also, if you haven't heard, the black skimmer and American oyster catcher were just classified as threatened by the state imperiled species listing process. This means they now have similar protection levels that the least-turned and snowy plover had, including clarification on take, harm, and harass. To find out more about the imperiled species listing updates and the correlating species actions plans, please go to myfwc.com. So to jump right in, what are we monitoring? We are monitoring rooftop sites where seabirds and shorebirds have historically nested in the past. This means that they are on existing buildings that have flat gravel roofs and have historic nesting. When they meet those two requirements, we ask volunteers to monitor them every year. At rooftops where you do see birds, we ask you to record nesting counts and colony outcomes. On all of this information can be found in our breeding bird protocol. The protocol is designed to give us information we need to detect trends in breeding populations and tell us where we need to protect and manage for imperiled birds. The protocol asks surveyors to monitor the same way at the same time so we can compare breeding populations across the state. And the protocol and all of the data sheets can be found at flshorebirddatabase.org. So when we say monitor at the same time, what we mean is to survey during the monthly count windows. The count windows are week-long survey windows that help provide a snapshot of breeding all over the state. So between March and August, we ask you to count at least once during each of these count windows, which would be a once-a-month survey. However, the count windows are a minimum that we ask. If you're able to go out weekly, as soon as birds are present, that's even better because it helps us get an estimate of peak nesting counts and helps us better understand the outcome of the nest, such as the reason if the colony fails. Keep in mind that the windows are for both rooftop monitoring and beach route surveys. So all shorebirds and seabirds are being monitored at the same time, whether they're on a beach or on a rooftop. So if you're new to this, it's important to understand a few key terms when monitoring rooftops. A site is the location, the rooftop, where the birds are nesting. Does this make sense so far? If you have any questions, just type them into the chat. And so here we go. here's what we're monitoring. Here's the list of historic rooftops. It's online, and the link to them is in the Breeding Bird Protocol, and it will be on this presentation when it gets online as well. So once again, check out this list. You can sort by county and see if there are ones close to you, and email me or email the. A couple of key terms are a site, which is the location, the roof, and then a site visit is when you actually go and check on that site, and you take 15 minutes and to see if birds are moving on and off that roof. And then as it says here, it's important to note, please do not go on any rooftops to monitor the colonies. Count what you see from the ground or on nearby buildings. So let's say that you conduct a site visit for a rooftop and find that the building is gone or it's been re-roofed. Please notify us and we will remove it from the historical nesting sites. You can do that in one of two ways. You can email Florida Shorebird Database email, or you can go into the Florida Shorebird Database and delete it from there, and it will notify us. And I will show you how to do that later. And similarly, if you find a new rooftop site that's never been reported to us, we want to add it to the database so it can be monitored now and into the future. Fill out a rooftop site details form, including the address or GPS coordinates. Add it to the Florida Shorebird database so that we receive a notification. And notify the property owner right away, even if you can, before leaving the site. So here's a rooftop site detail form. It asks basic information such as the address, if you notified the owner, and what kind of building. There's also optional information such as if it asks you if there's a chick checking program, which many partnerships coordinate, and then further details about the building, especially about edges and drain covers. If you find a new rooftop site or need to report a change in the management details, such as property ownership, etc., you would fill out the rooftop site details form. So rooftop monitoring is fairly simple, and there are 3 basic steps. You visit the rooftop, the site, during each count window, or weekly if you can when birds are present. Second, if you survey from the ground, which is how most people survey, stay and watch the roofs for 15 minutes. And then third, fill out a rooftop visit form each time you check on a rooftop, even when no birds are seen. And then finally, you're going to enter in the data from the forms into the Florida Shorebird database, which we'll go over later. And it's good to know that the forms that you fill out when you're out in the field mimic and mirror how you enter data into the Florida Shorebird database. So if you've clearly marked it out in the field, it's going to be really easy and simple to get into the database. So here's what a rooftop form looks like. We'll be going through it in more detail, especially this area in red, which covers the site status, vantage point, and the actual counts. You only need to fill out this one form when you check on a rooftop site. So the middle section of that form, this is what it looks like up close. It asks for basic information that we want to know each time you visit a rooftop and do a survey. The rooftop form asks for site status, outcome, colony loss, your vantage point, and the counts. The site status is the current activity at a rooftop. It lets us know what you're seeing while you're out there. There are 3 to choose from. No nesting yet this year. So that means, as far as you know, no nesting has happened this year. And it's important to note that this could happen all season long. It may be at a rooftop where the birds don't nest this year period. So it could be August and birds have never showed up, but it's still recorded so that we know if the roof is being used or not, and how many years in a row it may not be being used. The next is active, which means that you did see shorebirds or seabirds present on the roof, flying to and from or hovering over. On the ground, you may not be able to see all the birds present, but you'll be able to see birds flying to and from. This is why we ask you to wait up to 15 minutes because it could take that long for a bird to fly to or from the roof. And finally, they're no longer active. If a rooftop was active and then you return and find no activity for 15 minutes, you would record it as no longer active. And keep in mind that you could go in, let's say in June, and it's not active, but when you return in July, it's active again. You would still record it as not active in June and then make it active again in July. So it lets us know what's happening at the site at that time. The final outcome, this is recorded when a rooftop is no longer active. It indicates whether the rooftop site successfully produced fledges, also known as flight-capable young. If you saw fledges flying off the roof, you would check the first box. If you're confident that no flight-capable juveniles were produced, you'd check the second box. And finally, if you're unsure, you would check the last box. And the next question, we ask if there's been a major loss. This means that the colony loses 25% or more of the chicks or nests. And again, there are 3 options to choose from. If you choose yes, you can fill in the cause if you know why. If you're surveying from the ground, you may not know why, so keep that in mind. But there are times that you can safely assume that the colony was lost, say from a tropical storm. Like if you go out in July and the birds are active and you come back a couple of weeks later and in between there has been a tropical storm and they're gone, you know that it probably failed from that storm. We also ask you to record your vantage point each time you survey, which is the location from where you are monitoring the roof. Your options are on the ground, above or across. That's if you're fortunate enough to survey from a taller building that is adjacent to you to the one that you're surveying. And if that's an option, we recommend that you take advantage of these because they give us better colony counts. And in very rare cases, you would survey from the actual roof where the birds are nesting. Finally, we ask you to report counts, which is everything you can see. And we'll go into more detail on that soon. So, let me go back. Here's an example of a rooftop form where no nesting has occurred. If I went to a historic rooftop and surveyed for 15 minutes and no birds were seen, then filling out this form is easy. All I need to do is fill out that status and vantage point, enter that site, visit online, and I'm done. And here's an example of the same rooftop form if there are birds flying to, from, or hovering over the rooftop during the 15 minutes that I survey. The status is now active, and it will ask you to indicate if there's a major colony lost. It will ask you to check your vantage point and then fill out the count. Finally, if you return to a previously active roof and the birds seen earlier this season are no longer there, fill out the status, indicate final outcome if known, any loss if known, and the vantage point. And since I didn't see any birds, I wouldn't fill out any count table. However, if you do see shorebirds or seabirds, report all that you can see. We count all nests, chicks, juveniles, and adults that can be seen from the vantage point where you're at. So nest counts. So how would you count the nests without going on the roof? Which is the same as we do on the beach, because beach colonies, we ask folks to stay out of posted areas, which means that they have to count from a distance. So we observe how many adults are incubating. Adults in incubating posture means that we count it as a nest. So in this photo, there are 7 adults in incubating posture. These are least turns. We would report the nest count as 7 plus the extra 3 adults, equaling 10 adults total. And when you report chicks, there are some terms to know. It's important to know the difference between their age classes. Downy chicks, we have 3 classes. Downy chicks are just hatched up to a week old. They're covered in downy feathers and look very fuzzy. They're small and stay close to their parents. Feathered chicks are about 1 to 3 weeks old and have some feathers that have grown in. Some may have down, but they have more feathers than they do down. They're bigger and more mobile, and often chicks that fall from this roof are in this feathered stage. The third class is the flight-capable juveniles. They're about 3 to 4 weeks after hatching. They've learned to fly and can fly in short bursts. As soon as they're able to do that, we count them as flight-capable. So the vantage point, this is another thing that you'll be asked. The count type that you report to us depends on your vantage point. Your vantage point will obviously affect what you can see and what kind of count you can conduct. If you're above or across, you will do a direct count, estimate count, or indicate presence or absence. This is a more definitive type of count than on the ground counts. And if you're on the ground, you'll be able to provide us with a flush count, a high count, or did not check. And this is what you would see if you're on the ground, the picture on the right. So if you're able to survey from above or across the roof, if that's your vantage point, and you can directly see the activity on the roof, that you would conduct a direct count. A direct count means that you're able to see everything in the colony and you can count all nests, chicks, and adults, and the number you're reporting to us is the true actual number. Count twice every incubating adult / nest, chick, and adults and report the average. The next type is an estimate count. It's less accurate but gives us good information on the size of the colony. Estimate counts are used if part of the colony is obstructed from view and you can't see everything that's going on, such as in this photo. The way to do this is to survey the portion of the roof that can be directly counted and then multiply it by the portion of the colony that is obstructed. For example, if you have a black skimmer rooftop site and the colony is obstructed, let's say you count 20 birds directly and then multiply that to the other half that is obstructed, giving you 40 birds. So that's an example if half of your colony is obstructed and half can be seen. If you don't have time for a direct or estimate count, you can report presence or absence to us to at least let us know the colony is active in the area. It has limited utility, but at least let us know that nests may have been present for different species. And if you can't confirm presence or absence, report back did not check. And from the ground, we have different count types to reflect the vantage point from which you are counting, because you probably won't be able to see everything that's going on the rooftop like you would from across the building. So the first count is called a flush count. It is the highest number of individual birds you can see from the ground in 15 minutes. But a flush count does not necessarily mean a count from the birds raising off the roof in response to disturbance. So for example, if I see these 4 birds fly back to the rooftop in 15 minutes, but none leave, I would report a flush count of 4. A flush count can be a single vantage point or from walking around the building if the building is large and you cannot get a sense for all the areas that the birds are flying from one vantage point. The next is a high count, which is the equivalent of a flush count except it's for chicks. Chicks can't fly until they are fledging, so you report the highest number of chicks you're able to see from your vantage point. From the ground, unfortunately, that means chicks have fallen to the ground, and then sometimes you can see chicks on the edges of the building like this in the photo. And finally, a count type of did not check is actually the most common from surveys on the ground because you're not able to see adults or chicks. Then report did not check. Okay, great. So a little pop quiz here. Let's say that you're reporting these birds and you're on the ground. How would you report them if you stayed here in 15 minutes and this is all you saw? Yep, exactly. It would be a flush count. So on that siding, I report up here the status, the colony status is active. I would report I don't know on major colony loss. I would report my vantage point as on the ground. And then down below in the count, I would report the species. The nest did not check because you cannot see. Again, chicks and juveniles you can't see. And then the formatting's a little off over here, but you would report a flush count, count type, flush count there, and the number, which would be 4. And how would you report this chick? Correct. That would be a high count of 1. So again, colony is active. You don't fill out final outcome. Major loss, I don't know. Vantage point ground. Least turns, nest did not check. High count of 1. This is a flight capable juvenile. And then flush count would be 0 because if all you saw was that chick in that 15-minute span, that's all you would count. There would be no adults there on that particular survey. And then how, I gave this answer earlier, but do you remember how you would count these birds? All right, so we have a mix of correct answers. So this again would be, and again, this makes all the difference. Your vantage point makes all the difference. So it's again an active status. The major losses, I don't know. However, this time, because you could see, let's go back here, because you can see directly onto the roof, your vantage point changes to either above or across. So at this point, you can now give direct counts. So in that photo, we had 7 incubating adults and 3 other birds nearby. So the count type would be direct. Number of nests is 7. We did not see any chicks or juveniles, but it is again a direct count. 0 and 0, 0, and make sure to enter those zeros because they count. And again, it would be, you would add the 7 that are incubating plus the 3 that were nearby for a direct count of total adults, which equal 10. And on the bottom of the rooftop visit forms, there are fields for optional data. So if you see chicks falling off roofs, it's important to report this information into the database. So even though it's in an optional field, if you see them, please report them that they have fallen off. 3 least turned chicks alive. If you are able to return them to the roof, put yes here. If not, indicate where they were taken. Again, FWC has a list of local rehabilitators if you need that list, if you don't have it already. And FWC is also working on a smartphone app that is just for locating wildlife rehabbers. So if you're out in the field, you'll be able to look up right on your phone where that rehabber is and contact them. So that app is coming out soon. To the database demonstration, I just want to remind you that if you find banded birds, please report them to the researchers. There's a banding directory on the Florida Shorebird Alliance website, and the link is in the breeding bird protocol. Please note the color, the position, and codes of bands flags, get a GPS location and photo if possible, and email the researcher with your findings. And everything that I'm presenting today can be found online. The protocol, the forms, and helpful training videos are available. And the recorded video from this year's webinars will be posted soon. So if you go to flshorebirddatabase.org, you can find all of this information online. And so next I'm going to go into a live demonstration on the Florida Shorebird database. And we'll cover how to check for existing rooftop sites. If you're a new user, you'll want to check to see if rooftops already exist in your area. We'll go over how to create a new rooftop site if one doesn't exist in the database already, like let's say you found a new rooftop. We'll go over how to create, or how to add or edit your rooftop sites, and we'll also look how to delete a rooftop. Okay, so this is the Florida Shorebird Database website, and right now we are looking at the demonstration website. This allows me to enter data that will be deleted. When you enter in your data, you will not see these red words that say demonstration website. And before we enter, I just want to note that it's recommended that you use Google Chrome for your browser. Internet Explorer is not recommended. It's very slow and um, it is not that compatible with our database. So we recommend Chrome. It's the most compatible and it will get you through the process the fastest. If you are a new user, you can click here to get registered. And if you already have an existing information, you can sign in here. If you forgot your user ID, you can find it again if you entered, when you initially registered, if you entered in either your driver's license or your social security number, you can reclaim your ID by entering in one of those two pieces of information. However, if you don't know if you did not enter that in when you initially registered, then you need to email us to get your user ID. Please don't create a second account. And if you forgot your password, you can just click here and reset your password. So we log in. And you're going to go, whenever you initially log in, it will normally take you straight to this My Data page right here. And you would click down and add who you want to enter data for. It can allow you to enter data for other people. And if you have never had an account with the Florida Shorebird database, then all of these sites are going to be blank. So you can think of the My Data page as sort of the dashboard for everything that you're doing this season, for all of the routes possibly that you're surveying, for all of the sites within those routes, and also for the colonies. And then if you come over here to the rooftops, that's right there. And note that the map is going to be hidden. It's hidden by default, just so that things work faster for you, especially for people who have a lot of sites. So let's say that you want to add a rooftop that you're going to be surveying. The first thing that you want to do is check to see if that rooftop already exists. So you would go here to add existing rooftop, and you have several options to search from. You can search by one of these attributes, like the region, the county, the species, or another user's profile. You can also search by location, and you can add you can add in the address just like you would on Google Maps. So let's say that I want to find an area in St. Johns County. I'm planning to survey these roofs, and there are two here. And I know that I'm going to want to survey this rooftop that is this Riverside Center Big Lots in Beals. It has a really nice descriptive name. Over here you can check this map. It's another way of looking as well. So there's that Riverside Center again, and it shows you some of the information that the person who created this give all of this description here. So flush counts of lease turns are best viewed from behind the building near the load dock. Load dock is for the center store. Flush count over center store, Beals Outlet South End. So this person has left a really nice breadcrumbs for the next person who may be surveying if it's not them. So here you would click on the box, add it to my site, and it's been added to your data. So let's return to data to see it. Again, we're back on this My Data dashboard page. And here it is, Riverside Center, East Big Lots, and here's the last visit. Let's say that you want to create a new rooftop and you have already checked existing rooftops and you know that it doesn't exist. You would go to create a new rooftop. And again, there are several ways of doing this. You can zoom in on this map like this, and you can capture click. So this basically, if you zoom in really close to the area that you want and you see the specific rooftop, You can just click on it and the coordinates will pull up. Another way of doing this is to type in a search. So I'm going to type in, and this will zoom into that area. Let's say that I know that I want to survey the only Publix that's on Volano Beach. And for grins, let's just say that it's right here. So I'm going to capture click this right now. And here's the icon. And here are the coordinates of where it is. So I'm going to give it a descriptive site name, Volano Beach Publix. You'll be asked again if you've notified the building owner. Say no. If you know the address, we could put in a generic address here. I'm not sure what the zip code is. And it'll ask you what the building type is. Let's say it's a supermarket. So here are the optional fields. Again, they're helpful to put in here. We don't know what's going on. This is a new site, so we assume it does not have a chick checking program. Does it have an edge or a parapet around the entire building? If you saw that, then you would put yes or no. Let's say that it does. And are the drains covered? Yes, no, unknown. Again, this lets us know if FWC staff need to go out and put chick fencing around. So again, it's helpful to put description in, ground count from east side. So you can put in some descriptions. And hit submit. So the site has been added. You can now enter site visit data. You can enter another site if you have another new site, or you can return to my data. Let's say that we visited this area. So here it is, the Volano Beach Publix. And let's say I did a survey here for 15 minutes from the ground on the east side of the building. I'm the primary observer, and if you did it with someone else, you can add them there. Add the date that you did it and your start time. And let's say I went there today and it was active. This means that if I were to put no longer active, you can see that these three fields lit up. So that it's going to prompt you to answer if there was a major loss at the colony. However, if you do active or no nesting this year, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, it does light up for active. So if it's active and you don't know, because it's the first time that you surveyed, you don't know if the major losses happened, it's not going to ask you for the final outcome yet because it's active. It will ask you what your vantage point is, and again, this will determine what kind of count you can give us. And so let's say that we had least turns. And again, if you're on the ground, you're not going to be able to give us nests, so you would put did not check. Same, let's say that you saw some downy or some feathered chicks. So you would put a high count, you would put 0 here, and remember to fill in the zeros. And let's say you saw 2 feathered chicks and 0 flight capable, and then however many adults you saw. So that would be, again, a flesh count. Let's say we saw 6. Best time of day to survey. That is a great question. We it does not say in the breeding bird protocol if there's a specific time of day to survey, because most of our surveyors are volunteers and they're having to survey at different times throughout the day. So I would say that if you're a volunteer, that the best time to survey is when you can do it, especially during that window count. Okay, and so let's say that there was another species here that we had black skimmers. You can add that. So just add a row for every species that you have. Did not check. Did not check. Let's say you didn't see any black skimmer chicks. And then let's say that you saw 4 black skimmers there. So now we have entered in a site visit for this rooftop colony, and you can see here that it is complete and in the database. And so we can return to my data, and you can see that here it is. The Volano Beaks Publix was visited today. And here is another way that you can add a site visit. You can also view or edit your details. And let's say that you want to do that. Let's say that you went back to this site and you did find it, and you did contact the building owner, you would put yes here, and if you know their name, you would put all of that information in here if you can. And let's say now there is a chick checking program. You can change all of this information. As well, if you don't want, let's say that this rooftop is something that you're no longer going to survey, or let's say the building was knocked down, you could remove this from your data. It's going to ask you the removal reason. So let's say that the rooftop is now unsuitable, and you could put additional information, and it will remove it from your data, and it will notify our administrators, and you can see that that site is no longer there. So that's it. That's pretty simple. Again, I just want to point out that on the Florida Shorebird Database website, there are all of these resources here for trainings, and these webinars, this webinar and the surveyor webinar are going to be here soon from 2017. The 2016 videos are still there. There are also quick tutorials on how to enter data, add existing sites, and establish new routes. Additionally, the breeding bird protocol is here, and all of your data sheets are here. There's also a glossary of terms that are used frequently in the Florida Shorebird database, and here's the breeding bird calendar if you need it. I also want to point out that I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of rooftop resources. So I have switched out of the Florida Shorebird database website and into the Florida Shorebird Alliance.org website, and this is the communication website for the Alliance. If you were to go over to this tab and go to resources, you will see all of these resources here listed for you. On the rooftop section, you can see postcards for people, rooftop nesting handouts. You can find a letter to the owner or the manager of the building letting them know, thank you postcards, rooftop signs, and here are orientation. So this is a great presentation by Dr. Forrest from Eckerd College on volunteering, if it's something that you would like to see as well as this webinar. And again, here's the rooftop checking manual. It can teach you how to do this program and also check these daily. So check those out. And again, if you want a Chickaboom, please email me and I will get that information to you. So that is all of the information that I have to share with you today. If you have any questions, I would be willing to take them now.